Welcome to yet another episode of the Wizard Factory Live show. Today is May 20th of 2023, and we're live on YouTube, Facebook, and the One Great Work Network. Big show for you today. We're not having any guests on per se. I'm going to try to hold the fort down on my own, kind of step out of my comfort zone and try to, lead this ship today. But I've got a really interesting topic to get into, the real seven deadly sins. So I am going to talk a little bit about the actual seven deadly sins, which is actually not biblical, but it has its roots in Christianity and Catholicism. Touch on that a little bit, look at both sides of that, and then actually get into the real seven deadly sins that no one's talking about. Going to cover a little news piece today as well, bring that segment back for once. I don't always have time to find an article, and do commentary on that. But and then, of course, as always, joined by Rodney Goodwin for the astrological weather report. So big show today. Let's go ahead and kick it off, guys. All right, so welcome into the show. I'm excited to be here. If you are too, let me know in the chat. Let me know where you're tuning in from. I'd love to hear what places in the world, folks are tuning in to join us here. And if you have not yet, do consider subscribing. My name is Logan Hart. This is the Wizard Factory. This channel is all about giving you the spiritual tools and mindsets to live a more empowered life. If you're new here, welcome to our growing community of those seeking self-improvement, spiritual evolution, and a tribal family. So if that resonates with you, join us. Remember the tribe, subscribe down below, and make sure you click that bell so that you don't miss a video and you're not relying on these bullshit algorithms. With that, of course, you know what to do with the like button.
Smash, smash, smash. Yeah.
All right. So, how's everyone doing today? We got Hexproof in the house. What's up, brother? Welcome to the show, and thank you for joining Patreon here recently. So, and we'll get back into that. Also, you said it, man. That's exactly right. But no spoilers yet. We'll get more into depth on that. Rika, welcome. Glad you're here. Mr. Steven, good to see you, buddy. Tommy from Glasgow, Scotland. Well, that's just great. That's awesome, man. I wanna visit Scotland. Jason, welcome in. Separation from natural law, exactly. Got Wyoming, driven through there many times, nearly get blown over in my big truck on the I-80 right there. Yeah, it's a beast, man. Beautiful though, love it. Jackie from Arizona, thank you for being here. Great to see you. I hope I'm not missing anyone. All right, so thank you all for being in here. Let's go ahead and get into a news piece here. So I gotta share my screen. This is something I came across last night that I thought was really interesting. Ron DeSantis signed 5 bills restricting trans rights in Florida. So, trans rights. Well, most people have no fucking clue what a right even is, and rights don't come from government. They can only be taken away from government, but some people think that the government's taking away their rights when they're actually not rights at all. So plenty of confusion on both sides. So let's just touch on this a little bit. It's just, I've been tracking the situation, this whole trans agenda thing. I mean, it's really starting to take hold a lot more lately. I'm noticing you're just seeing more and more of it, more backlash. And looking here, something called the Let Kids Be Kids package, consisting of 5 bills. He signed in, and then they touch on here. Of course, they start by framing it. Governor Ron DeSantis rang in the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia. So, anti-trans bills, right? It's not pro-freedom. It's not just pro-choice. It's anti-trans. So really pushing the agenda hard there. So let's look at what this bill actually does. This is, again, the governor of Florida. So Bill 254 imposes harsh restrictions on gender-affirming care for both minors and adults. I found that to be a little bit vague. They're saying it's healthcare type stuff, but what is healthcare, right? Is this mental health? Is this actually access to hormonal, like transition type procedures? It doesn't really say here. It's not super clear to me. So, I mean, we'll kind of put that on the side. Bill 1069 bans trans students from being able to use their correct pronouns and allows anyone in a school district to flag classroom or library materials that contains sexual content for potentially permanent removal. So, first of all, how is this anti-trans, and how is this lumped in with this bag and seen as a negative thing when we're talking about removing sexual content from classroom or library material? Like, what is that? And then, there's so much pushback about, oh, this has nothing to do with grooming or pedophilia or any of this kind of stuff. Well, then what the fuck does this, have to do with being anti-trans, first of all? HB 1438 bans minors from drag performances with hefty penalties for establishments that might violate its provision. And I looked at this, and it's basically saying that there's penalties and punishments for establishments that are allowing children into adult performances. Like, what? And this is all put in this basket of, oh, just look what this scumbag's doing and trampling on trans rights. What are you talking about? Like, that's sick, man. Like, kids have no place being in in drag performances and adult entertainment shows. Like, this is really bad, that this is seen as a problem, and that's trampling rights, HB 1521 would ban trans people from using correct gendered facilities in schools, prisons, or any public buildings. So can't use the bathroom in something that doesn't match your hardware, And then 225 gives the state government control of over Florida High School Athletic Association to ensure women's sports are protected, which is right-wing code for anti-trans sports bans, right? Again, just the spin, the vitriol in the wording of all of this. There's so much to unpack here, really. I mean, it's really interesting. First of all, like, government authority aside, if there wasn't a government, something like sports is a group activity. So you have to be willing to kind of agree on what is and is not allowed, right? Because it's a sport. The whole point is for it to be fair, right? Because if it's not fair, then the whole competition aspect of it is utterly pointless. And winning and achievement, it all goes out the window because the rules are skewed. So, I mean, I'm not saying I'm pro government intervention, but I definitely don't think that trans people, especially male to female, should be participating in female sports. I mean, there's plenty of cases of them being mediocre athletes, transitioning and going to women's sports, and then absolutely dominating. I mean, it's so like it's talking about rights of the trans people to be involved in these type of events, but then what about the rights of all of the other women that are participating and that really take a lot of serious, take a lot of pride in their performances and their in the competition and all of that. Like one person coming in there messing it up for all of them and taking all the fun and like meaning out of it essentially. So I mean, in a anarchist world, they would be banding together and basically saying, we don't want you to participate. It's not fair. It's disrupting the whole premise of the sports. So like that would be taken care of at the ground level. But you know, so it's again, it's not a black and white thing. The decision I think is a good one, but also one that shouldn't be for the government to decide, if that makes sense. It should be for the people to decide. So, you have to kind of be able to use your discernment and look at both sides and see where because there's bullshit happening on both sides. Again, the decision is correct, but it's not the government that should be making it and forcing it. It should be the people that are actually involved in that. So, you know, he's kind of touting, we've said in Florida that we're going to remain a refuge of sanity and a citadel of normalcy, and kids should have an upbringing that reflects that. And then DeSantis, a beacon of normalcy himself. This is the article taking a pot shot at him, trying to discredit him. I clicked this link and it was some stupid thing where it was a clip where his head was kind of shaking like this because they asked him some question that made him uncomfortable, and everybody was just losing their shit and like making all these memes and stuff. I mean, yeah, it's a little funny, but then to cite that as, oh, well, you're no beacon of normalcy yourself. Your head did a funny thing one time. And it's like, what the hell is that? Like, everybody has a bad angle sometimes, like to say that discredits anything you say. I mean, that just shows the credibility and the level of class, and integrity that these people have. It's just disgusting to me. I hate seeing this. But overall, I agree with his sentiment. Again, I don't think it's the state's place to be making these kind of decisions backed by violence, but I do think that children should be insulated from this kind of debauchery. Like, I don't think it's healthy. I don't think it's good, even for adults. But of course, sovereignty is first, and they can make those decisions. But the children need to be left out of it. So let's see. Let's check the comments. Yeah, why is it all about sexual perversion? Exactly, right? It's not just, being around people that dress like as the opposite gender. No, it's like strip tease and pole dancing and thongs, and it's very sexual. It's really not a fucking environment for children whatsoever. Exactly. And Tommy, you nailed it right here. It's another cog in the wheel of eugenics, because this is how people are going to cull themselves, be cut off from their sexual power, from their creative power. To be neutered is to be neutral. Neutrality is inert. It has no power. That sexual, that gender, that duality and polarity is where your power is derived from. So there's so much confusion around this, and the fact that they're gaslighting everyone else into insisting, no, this is not just not mental illness. It's good, it's healthy, it's brave, right? We need to be praising this and exposing our children to it. It's completely backwards. So anyway, I'm already kind of stressed out talking about this because it really just fucking irks me, man. But that's the news segment I have for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm keeping an eye on this, because this is one really hot area that they're turning up the volume on, and it's not going to end well. I'll tell you that much. So I think we need to be talking about this, right, and being brutally honest and not bowing our knee to these bullies and these, tyrants that are using basically social terrorism to make people so afraid to say anything. And that's exactly how evil starts to just run amok, is when, you know, equally good people fail to not do the right thing. So I'm at least trying to do my part, speak it against this, and bring awareness to it, because awareness creates choice. And if we're all just going along with what everybody's saying because it sounds good, and it's packaged as this, oh, love and acceptance and equality, it's you know it's none of that. Exactly. Will. That's another good point. They can't reproduce themselves, so they have to essentially recruit, right, and get them young. That's Everybody knows that's the best way to go. So, all right, enough about that. Just wanted to bring some light and awareness on that. So we'll cover some quick announcements, and then we'll bring Rodney on for his awesome Astrodney segment, right? All right. So first of all, I encourage you to follow the Wizard Factory on social media. I'm fairly active. There's the Wizard Factory Facebook page. There's the Instagram page. I post lots of images, shorts, things like that, as well as following me personally. And I'll come back to this a bit later. But I'm fairly active here, and if you don't always have time to watch a 2 or 3 hour video via the live show, follow me here and get those kind of short little daily doses of thought provoking and hopefully empowering content. Join the Patreon. It's $4.99 a month, and you get these perks right here. Most of all, just supporting what I do. That really helps out a lot. And we're now up to 5 people. We've had several join recently, so give a shout out real quick to them. Edos Hugh, Slope Oak, AJK Green, Theo Lux, and Joshua Brown, who's the Hexproof Anarchist right here recently, has just joined. So thank you all so very much. That really does help, and you get a little something back in return. Again, eventually I would like to open back up the Wizard tier, not the Wizard tier, the Tribe tier, which would have a monthly group call with me, doing private Q&A, like a rune reading, things like that, kind of a roundtable discussion with you all, because, I want to start building like deeper, real connections with all of you. So let's see what else we have here. Right. Do check out the One Great Work Network. Myself is on there, as well as I think like 60 some odd we're up to now. Other content creators doing this kind of work, talking about truth, morality, natural law, esoteric sciences, all of this kind of stuff. Yeah, I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much. And yeah, I love this. Smash, right? Like the tomahawk dude. Show with Sethicus was awesome. Thanks, man. Yeah, I'm going to be posting that on my channel here as well. I will drop it on Patreon first, so if you're subscribed there, that's one of the perks, is you get early access to stuff before it goes public. Qualities, yes, well said. We don't live in should land. It's tragic. Yeah, exactly, Sarah. Yeah, and the only way to reverse this is to be speaking truth, right? Standing up for and representing truth in the face of insanity, right? Mental illness. Not co-signing on delusion, right? But saying no, right? The most powerful word in the universe. So, one last thing, if you have not yet, I highly encourage you to check out the initiation package. So I'll stop for just a moment to share this short clip with you on that. Hey guys, hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I just want to take a quick moment to offer you a special gift. It's the free initiation package download. This is a free download package that includes the Toolbox mini course. I created this package to equip you with all of the essential tools you need for any type of energetic or magical practice for anyone serious about their spiritual development. It's comprised of 3 parts: the circle, the breath, and the voice, where you'll learn how to cast the Circle of the Magi, various breathwork techniques, including a powerful guided breathwork meditation, Rune Galler, and more. You'll also get access to the Inner Sanctum, our private Facebook group and Discord server, as well as some Wizard Factory wallpapers for desktop and mobile, all for free. And for those who've already seen this course, I'm happy to announce that this is a brand new remake with better production and even more information. You can find the link to get yours in the description below. So check it out and let's get back to the content. Thanks, Logan. Great message. And Josh says the package is very good. Yes, highly encourage you. I put a lot of work into that, the remake especially. Very high quality and lots of good and useful, most importantly, information. So, without further ado, let's get into the astrological breakdown with Rodney. What's up, my man? How you doing today?
Hey man, how you doing, man? This that news article was something else, man. Holy crap,
Dude, it's a trip,
wow,
man.
The Dark Lords are controlling the gates, man, at the moment. But with this shit, dude, you can see how the polarity pulls, even if it's over to the right. You know how the disinformation and how it affects the mind of the collective in context to this media and to the gate there, the ear gate and the eye gate, And like Will said, they're coming for the children because this is how they have to do it. They have to get the children, and they have to psyop a generation. And this is why we have to become the gatekeepers. We have to take the fucking gates back, And that's why we're doing these shows. That's why we're putting out truth and segments and shorts and reels and TikToks, and we're hitting the bi-wave frequencies in context to the lockdown. So I just encourage everybody, if you are participating in that, keep going, keep moving. This is a great time right now with this transit we are in the midst of to really forge something more powerful than you ever have before. And if you haven't created anything yet, and you've been thinking about it, and you've been studying and doing the path work and working, doing the internal work, I just want to encourage you to step out and share and start doing some stuff with the resources that you've already been given. Because this particular transit really is about, which we're going to get into, really is about what the universe has already given you to work with. But because of stagnation and procrastination, we haven't pulled those resources into our actual field yet. They're still sitting on the sidelines in context. And then we haven't used our Mars energy, in context of putting things into action, actually making that choice to do that. And so this particular transit is going to give us that power. It's going to set us up into a place where we can actually move into, a real, being a real arrow point in context. So what we have going on today is I want to get into this Pluto, Jupiter, Mars transit. Is there a way that I can share that? I think I do. Yes.
Yeah, there's a share screen button at the bottom.
Okay, just 1 second. Let me figure that out. Just bear with me 1 minute here. Okay, share
elevator music.
Let's see here. That's not it. Share screen. There it is. Boom. Boom. Did that come up?
There it is.
All right, it's just real quick. I want you to take a look at this this setup we got going on here. So what this is called a T-square. You see this big red triangle right here? Okay, so the point or the cause point of this is Jupiter. As you can see, you have a square here to Pluto. That's what this 90-degree angle is here. Pluto's sitting at 0 degrees Aquarius. And then you have another square running to the Mars energy, which is entering Leo today. So it will be at 0 degrees here soon. And then we have an opposition from Mars to Pluto, which are the octaves on the wheel in context to Mars, which is Aries, and Pluto, which is Scorpio. So what we have here is a very dynamic energy. And how this plays out is that with Jupiter sitting here in Taurus, this is all about it's an expansion of Earth energies. Okay, very powerful Earth-like energies. So stability, values, morals. Taurus is a very moral value, lots of values and morals that are laid down in your life: self-worth, self-love, passion for the love for yourself, and also anything that comes out of the earth in context to that. Okay, and also finances. So what are we doing here? We're squaring off with the Mars energy that's moving into Leo, right? So what is Mars in Leo? Okay, so Leo is the Sun King, right? It's the Sun King. So that's the fifth gate in context to, your soul expression, your creativity, how you're going to put things in action in context to your confidence and your strength, and then Pluto is sitting here charging it as well. Pluto is the power planet. The word Pluto actually means riches. So literally, like, this is the power planet of riches. And so what's happening here is that Pluto is really, it's like this Pluto square to Jupiter, and then with Mars sitting there, this is like nuclear. So this next week, we are definitely wanting to set our intent and start to put things into actions that we have been setting on the side. I'm going to go ahead and stop this screen share here. I just wanted to show you that. Trying to figure out how to do that.
I got you, bro. I already took care of it.
Oh, did you? Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Let me bring my restream back up. There we go. So basically what's happening here is that with this transit that's going on, it's a ferocious transit. And the things that we have, the resources that we've already been given, and to all of our lives that we're ready to step into and use, this is where we have to pull out of stagnation, pull out of procrastination, and bring them to the forefront and really look at what we've been given to use in context to our knowledge, our wisdom, and the resources that we have at our disposal at this moment. Because how can the universe give you more resources when you haven't used the ones that you've already been given? And so this is all about taking what you've been given and now putting it into action in context to your confidence and strength. This is where you can challenge the obstacles in your life that have been holding you back and keeping you from stepping into a place of power in your life. And shed the procrastination, shed the stagnation, and put yourself into the place with Mars and Leo. See, which is a very powerful position in context to putting things in actions with your confidence and your strength and your will force. Because the Leo gate is all about the sun. And this is what gets inverted to the tyrannical narcissistic aspect on the shadow side. Why? Because it's locked down from the actual sixth dimension, or the Virgo aspect, or the Virgo cluster of context. It's locked down from that place down on the gates, right? So what happens? Service to others turns into using others. See? And this is where you get the tyrannical king in context to the narcissistic aspect, right? And where that disconnect happens. And so this is where we look and to literally see how government rules over the mind of the people in context to this tyrannical, this tyrannical behaviors that they input and implant into the collective consciousness in context to the gates. And when we start to realize that lockdown becomes it's a usury to the people. And what really sucks is that people want more of that shit because they can't seem to get a control of their own mind for some reason. There's something blocking them from actually stepping into their true power and sovereignty as a person and as an individual. Why? Because they don't really want to take responsibility for their own lives. They want government or some other entity to do that for them. And this is where the black sun happens in context to the fifth gate, to the Leo aspect, because it's darkened, it's eclipsed to that sun, to that will force. And so you become what? Emasculated. You become stagnant. You become, potentially siphoned off in context to your system mechanics and your soul itself. And so you don't have any creative expression. You're just an NPC, a cog in the wheel, doing your thing, going to your matrix job, eating the matrix food, having the matrix relationship. And then at the end of the day, when you finally, at the end of your life, you're like, what the hell did I actually accomplish? What did I actually leave as a legacy in my life? Fucking nothing, because I was wrote in on my whole life. This is the problem, see? And so the solution is what? Finding your own true core essence and knowing who the hell you are. And that is transcending and bringing this Leo gate into its actual position where it needs to be, where you are shining like the actual sun, with your confidence and your strength. Mars in Leo is all about kicking some ass and moving through the obstacles. And with Pluto sitting there, infusing the power to the opposition and creating the tension, and then Jupiter literally expanding that tension. This is where we have to take back the things in our lives that have been taken from us and see where we've given our power away. This is a powerful transit to transform. See? And this is also a transit of resources, because Pluto is sitting there in context, right? So this is all about what? The things that have been lying dormant in context to your resources, you've got to tap into. So whatever you still have there that you haven't tapped into, it's time to bring that to the forefront and move your ass. See? And when we start to do that, whether it's, I've been wanting to do an exercise thing for so long and I just putting it off, this is the time to do it. This is the time to step into that exercising your physical body, your mental capabilities, see? Putting things into protocol into your life over this next week to 2 weeks, where this transit is going to give you that power to do that, to tap into much easier, see? And with that, you also have what? You have to utilize it. You've got to take the bull by the horn, so to speak, the Taurus gate, and you've got to grab those horns, and you got to start wielding something in your life that's going to create a power base and manifestation to the 10th gate of Capricorn, and actually start to leave a legacy in context to your actual personal incarnation. And when we start to do this, we start to gain the law of momentum. The principle of momentum starts to kick in, and that's when we start creating that that power base to expansion with the Jupiter energies in our lives. See, Jupiter runs to the galactic center. The galactic center is at 27 degrees of Sagittarius. This is the quantum field. This is where we need to look at our transits, look where our placings are in context to accessing and truly getting ignited with our heart core intelligence and our first eye. See, that is the eye of Ra. That is the eye of Odin in context. See, the wisdom and to be able to actually see what the hell is going on. And the story of Odin, his thirst was for wisdom, right? And so this is why he sacrificed himself unto himself. This is why he plucked out his eye and threw it into the well of Mirmir. See, because it was the actual wisdom of an enlightenment and illumination in context to extracting the runes from Ganundagap to understand the wisdom of the cosmos. This is where we have to get. That's what this transit's all about. It's about stepping into a place on another level, on a higher level, and bringing yourself into a place of self-sacrifice, but also self-empowerment to this Mars and Leo energy. And that is the Eye of Ra. That is the Eye of Odin in context to where we need to go as mages and path workers as we're doing this work. And whatever you have to work with, this is the time to gather that together and into density now, and bring it into a place where you are singled eye, where your eye becomes full of light. See? Because then that creates your etheric body becomes full of light, because that sun now is being burst out and you're not being blinded by the false cold light in context to religion and political gates and first veil and all that shit and dark sorcery, where you think you're illuminated, you think you're woke, you think you're awake, but you're actually not. You're actually being blinded by the false cold light. And this is where we have to flip it, because if we're shining out this way, we become what? Kanu. We become the torch. See? And that torch begins to light our path in context to the runes. See? And that aspect. And so a kind of shadow aspect of this, in context to shadow work, would be the Jupiter and Taurus aspect, because that is an earth energy. We are made of earth and water. And so what does that mean? There could be an alchemical aspect to this as well, in context to calcination and also the Athanor, to the burning. Because what's happening here, Mars and Leo, it's a fire element, right? So what are we dealing with here? We're dealing with the calcination process and actual power struggles within ourselves to make transformation. So it's like a volcano. It's all this pent up energy inside of us. And this is what Pluto brings to the gate, or to the aspect, because it's going to help us transform and release all that putrefaction, release all of that pent up energy that's been inside of us because of the trauma based aspects that we have been holding on to for all these years or all this time, not only from our own lineage and life and blood codes, but also just from our, from the setup of in our family line, in context to what was programmed in us from the age from the womb to 7 years of age, and looking at the subconscious, unconscious aspect, because the other thing that's happening is we have a square from Neptune to the galactic center at 27 degrees. And this is all the aspect of doing the spiritual work to illuminate the subconscious and unconscious minds, so that you can actually see and look into the mirror of your own soul. And so these are very powerful alchemical transits that are going on right here. And the positive thing about this is that literally it's going to give you the strength to kick some ass in your life over this next 2 weeks, and set something into motion that's going to take you into the next year, 2 years, 5 years, etc., in context to what you want to lay down in the next few weeks. So that's kind of what's going on with the transits. I know I'm getting a very, very cathartic here a little bit.
I love it, man.
I'm passionate about it,
It's very powerful stuff and very encouraging, of course. I think a lot of people have really been feeling that fire, the fires of tribulation and struggle, and just that tightness, right? And we're ready for expansion. We're ready to just blow it out, right? So again, and I think reiterating time frames definitely really helps kind of keep your eye on the prize, right? Like if you feel like you're in a tunnel with no light at the end, you don't know like how long you can keep going. But when you can actually fixate on, I just got to make it 2 more weeks, that kind of helps like kick you in the ass and be like, just fucking power through and get it done.
It does, because now you have an actual setup in context to what's running through the ethers with energy, with this particular aspect, this T square, right? That's creating a lot of tension on the internal level. We could see on the external level, on the world stage, some major power struggles go on. We could see volcanic eruptions take place in context to this in this transit as well. I'm not saying we will, but it's possible we could see volcanoes, and eruptions from the earth element itself, on that particular level. On the political realm, we could see major power struggles going on to all the way down to the European Union, all the way down to all of these different entities that were created that are now having a transit with the South Node in context to Scorpio. And there's a lot of aspects that are going on. I'm not going to get into it all, but I've been doing some study. There's a lot of aspects of an unveiling and an uncovering that's getting ready to take place. Major whistleblowers coming up, dropping the veils. I mean, we could see some major what do they call that when something gets occulted? Apocalypto moments.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Unveiling.
apocalypto moments that could come to the forefront on the world stage as well during this transit. And also with the Jupiter transiting the north node and dropping that energy to the south node of Scorpio at 2 degrees, we could definitely see some major uncovering taking place in context to this, you know. And I don't know what all will play out, but the energies are definitely there and ripe to manifest this.
Love it. Cool, man. Always appreciated. Real quickly, tell people what you'd like them to do. Come follow you, get some consultation.
Yeah, I mean, I just did a transit reading with someone last night, and it was very powerful. It took about 2.5 hours to get through it all, but you know, she was like, "Oh my God, yes, this is exactly setting up." You know, and I went through each transit and how it was going to affect her life, what she could look out for, you know, during these months that, you know, that heightened energies. Because what people don't realize is that the transits are there to help you evolve. It's called high planetary magic. It's called high planetary alchemy. So when we're dealing with the solar spiral, what are we dealing with? There's setups and configurations in context to how energies are moving and connecting to your templating. So as things transit, especially when things transit the galactic center in context to your templating at 27 degrees Sagittarius, this is the time where you have upgrades. So it's always good to know how you can work with those transits to take yourself to a new version of yourself, the next level of your evolution in context to your mind, your emotion, and then your action to the trivium aspect. So this is how we do it. And can I read one thing really quick before we finish up here?
Sure, man.
I got to pull it up because it just came to my mind.
Yeah.
I was looking at this. I posted this a while back. Pull it up here. Just 1 second. Just bear with me.
Yeah, one thing that came to mind with what you were talking about, it's like a useful mindset to have is, you know, and it's kind of a cliche you hear in general, but especially with these transits, they're not happening to you, they're happening for you.
Exactly.
And that's how you
And
stay in your power is
that
by
is, yes. And that takes
taking
it
that
back to
in.
your state of mind where everything runs from, you know, because without your state of mind being correct, right, you're creating a distorted vibrational correspondence to your choices.
Mhm. Right. Always staying in that empowered mindset.
That's
Like
correct.
what is happening, and how can I actually leverage this and utilize it to my benefit, my empowerment, my
Right.
up leveling.
Exactly. So getting to the galactic center, which I'm going to talk about next week with the square to Neptune, we're really going to get into it. The galactic center, at the center of the Milky Way, is an actual black hole. And I look at it in context to Ganuda Gap or you know, the womb, so to speak, or a place where you can, you know, your fire magic comes online, because it runs to the 9th house, which is Jupiter. So Jupiter anchors the Sagittarian gate in context, right? So at 27 degrees, and you can be pretty liberal with this in context to placings. So if you have, you know, anything 10 degrees out on either side of that, you know, you're still being influenced by the galactic center. Plus, also you have squares, oppositions, sextiles, trines in context to your orbital placings around the wheel that can also be affected by that galactic center. And that's not even counting the transits that go through in context to that. So there's all this thing that we have to be able to understand and understand working with our galactic center in context to this, right? So this is where we have to understand how the human body works, how it works on the etheric level, and how we actually manifest, how we actually tick. So I'm going to read this. It's just a couple paragraphs.
Know thyself.
Exactly. The human body is a quantum electromagnetic organic technology. This is bioforce to chemical reactions taking place on a microcosmic vibrational broadcast. Its multidimensional functions are complex and simplistic all at the same time. As to its ability to hold consciousness and create morphogenic fields of matter is a complex process that is not only based in a scientific model, but also to its spiritual counterpart, housing the essence of our eternal existence. The law of vibration is a level of frequency we as humans broadcast from our conscious to superconscious mind, and from the subrealms to the unconscious mind. All of these aspects are creating a vibrational frequency that is broadcasting to the cosmic ethers. Correspondence, as within as without, is always in play as to what we are creating and to the measure we can attain awareness to choice. As stated before, it is your state of mind that determines the trajectory of your path. This is called vibrational correspondence. And as motion is put into existence from thought to emotion, which becomes energy in motion, we create what we speak in context to the trivium as we put it into our choices. The law of vibration states this. So, this is literally how it works to the technology when you're working with the Hermetica, and dealing with everything from the state of mind all the way up. And then working with the cosmic law of alchemy in context to the from calcination to coagulation. And when we have those working and tracking in alignment, this is a powerful transformative aspect to our evolution because it is truth. And when you are aligned with truth, you will evolve, period.
Right. That's the only way.
Exactly.
And by going against truth, that's de-evolution.
Exactly.
And destruction. And that's what
Exactly.
natural law is all about. It is the engine of evolution.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to read that because it came up in my it was like,
hell
oh,
yeah.
yeah.
No,
yeah.
that was badass, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. So
anyway,
that's all I've got. So you can get a hold of me at hardcoreproductions9gmail.com. You can hit my Facebook page, Hardcore Productions. You can book a session there. You can hit me up on Messenger on Rodney Goodwin. You can go to my link tree, which is in the description below. And that has actually all of my positions there that you can get to, my YouTube channel and thus. And, don't be afraid to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm putting out videos all the time. So, don't be afraid to go to Hardcore Productions and just hit the button, man.
Yeah, no, definitely follow Rodney. He puts out great videos fairly regularly, giving these kind of same similar breakdowns, but on a more regular basis on like what's happening in the the astro realm, as well as do hit him up for consultation, especially transits where his specialty lies. So,
yes, absolutely. And
Rodney,
I'm not just an astrologist. I read runes, tarot. I work with numerology. I work with all the arts of gnosis.
Yeah.
So
he's a regular wizard, guys.
Yeah,
check
so
him out.
We can get into all of it, man, and we can weave it as well, man. So, it's just all about what you want to get into. So,
absolutely, Rodney, awesome stuff as always. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely,
and,
man.
Yeah, we'll see you next week, man.
Okay, man.
I might bring you back on later on if you just hang around, or if you raise your hand, you want to chime in on something.
Absolutely,
otherwise,
man.
I'm going to try to kind of run this one. But
beautiful, man.
Awesome. Thank you, brother.
Okay.
Awesome stuff, guys. So, how are you liking this so far? Make some noise in the chat. Let me know, that, and rile up that algorithm. Hopefully, that helps. Helps with getting the video distributed on these platforms. That really helps, because I'm definitely wanting to grow this channel, grow my reach, and ultimately help more people with truth-based content. So Yeah, up next, I want to touch briefly on a little a post that I made this week. I think this could be like kind of one segment sometimes that I touch on. It's like post of the week or something like that because I am fairly active on social media and I post different things. But uh, Dick, the link is down below, so you can just click his link tree and it has all of his stuff right there. So yeah, definitely go subscribe. So yeah, so post of the week. Again, I post quite a bit, different reels and things like this is kind of my specialty, like short form, like quotes and things that I come up with that are meant to be very short and to the point, but very potent, right? That pack a punch. And oftentimes I like to leave a little bit of ambiguity to let people kind of project their assumptions and their false ideas and come and jump in the comments and sometimes be antagonistic and things like that, which is just great because the more bustle happening in the comments, the more my post gets seen by more people. So I think that's awesome and frankly pretty hilarious that the more people try to push back and fight, things that I say, it's really only just helping my cause. And for every one hater, there's probably 10 or 20 people that really just get it and they appreciate that and they'll hit that like button or share it or something like that. So yeah, good stuff. Lene, thank you for that. Appreciate it. So yeah, this one here did pretty well. Got some good shares and likes and everything. Um, True self love looks like arrogance to the weak and weakness to the arrogant. And what this is kind of playing on here is the dialectical thinking and the state of mental imbalance that people are generally stuck in. Man, that mouse thing is kind of annoying, isn't it? It's like glitching out. But, anyways, um, yeah, I mean, trauma tends to polarize people into either the left or right brain executive positions and are primarily running in that state of imbalance. So it disrupts your sense of self and it will either it'll crush your identity to where you think that you're worthless, you're nothing, you deserve to be punished and things. You're kind of identified with the victim in whatever traumatic experiences you might have had, or you get polarized to the other side where you kind of identify actually with the abuser, and that really inflates your sense of self, expands it out far beyond what is healthy and where it should be. And that's where arrogance kind of comes in, is because they're actually compensating for a feeling of powerlessness and worthlessness, right? It's self-loathing at the end of the day. It's ironic though. Both are forms of self-loathing. It's just that one fully internalizes that and the other like swings completely the opposite way on the pendulum and overinflates their sense of self and has like a god complex essentially, right? And don't know boundaries, don't respect boundaries, and don't especially set boundaries for themselves. Uh, Friend request from Christopher, who's in the chat. I appreciate that. So, hopefully that makes sense. And yeah, that's kind of the general idea, is that true self-love, I find, is actually quite triggering to a lot of people. And I've experienced this firsthand, whether it's by something I've said or a post that I made or something like that. And it's quite astounding sometimes the pushback that you'll get, like where people will call you a narcissist, or they'll think like you're just being like kind of new age woo woo because you're talking about self-love or something like that. And it's like you're seeing both sides of that, where yeah, like they don't know how to process true self-love, because what that is it's balanced, it's synthesized, loving yourself and also respecting others, right? Because if you truly love yourself, you will love others by extension, right? This is the law of correspondence. And a person who loves themselves can't treat others badly, because not only do they recognize that they are them, like we're all one in a grand consciousness state of mind, but also to cause harm to others is also causing harm to yourself spiritually. So if you truly love yourself, you're not going to disrespect yourself and compromise your own integrity, because you actually do love yourself and you want to treat yourself through your actions with the utmost respect as well. So there's post of the week. And with that, let's go ahead and move forward into the topical topic. That's a bit redundant, isn't it? Topical topic, topical discussion. We're going to get into the real 7 deadly sins, right? The real, not the ones. And we're going to talk about the originals coming out of the Christian faith, but then we'll get into the real 7 deadly sins, which are actually really, truly relevant, especially in today's world. So, first, let's touch on the Christian edition. Now, when I started doing a little bit of research on this, I always kind of assumed that these were somewhere in the Bible. And I mean, that's a bit presumptuous for me, as I used to be quite the like Sunday school student, right? I was raised Christian, but not just your average Christian. You know, I definitely took it seriously in my younger years, and I still have quite a bit of knowledge, but a lot of it has faded. And it's easy for things like this. You kind of make certain assumptions, but this was not actually biblically based. This was an idea that sort of developed out of several philosophers. It was first coined by Ponticus in the 4th century, and then enumerated by Pope Gregory the First, and then elaborated by Saint Thomas Aquinas, who was a prolific Christian philosopher. So, going into these one by one, I found this article to be a pretty good breakdown. These 7 deadly sins, they're also known as capital sins or cardinal sins. These transgressions are considered to be the root of all other sins. They are the sins that are fatal to our spiritual progress. Committing these sins can lead to committing various other kinds of immoral acts, which in turn can lead to the death of the soul. So, first we need to look at kind of what is sin, right? Sin is sort of defined etymologically as missing the mark. So, this is getting into kind of where I like to differentiate moral versus ethical. And I know students of Mark Passio and things like that, we've really, driven home this idea of objective morality. But because I think it's important to make this distinction, I'm going to go ahead and say morality is more the personal and subjective areas, and specifically personal. And then ethics is more to do with the objective and the interpersonal, right? The how we're actually dealing with interpersonal relationships and interactions. So just for usefulness of delineating those terms. So in this context, and I dove into this with the idea that, it's all just self-loathing nonsense. And there is some of that, but reading these explanations, I was actually pretty impressed at, like, they're really reasonable as a matter of fact, but you have to have the right context. So let's actually get into that. To put it simply, deadly sins are called such because it causes spiritual death. As Evagrius pointed out in his work, Gnostic Centuries, our essential function as spiritual beings is to experience union with God. I can kind of agree with that, in a sense of like consciousness and the expansion of consciousness and the expansion of the human experience, right? Our abilities, our skills, our capacity to love and to create. These are kind of the crux of what is spiritual. Well, I think that if you're disconnected from God, you're you're not going to be able to do any of those things very well, if at all, because your own ego is going to be in the way. And again, I'm not one that thinks the ego is a bad thing. In fact, I equate ego with self-love, or sorry, with your sense of self. Ego is just who you think you are. And that can either be in alignment with truth or it can be highly illusory. And that's actually important. It's funny because I didn't even intend for that post that I touched on to kind of coincide with this topic, but it kind of does in that sense because, yeah, to truly have self-love is you can't love yourself if there is no you, if there is no self. That's what your ego is. So properly healing and calibrating where the construct of yourself should be in actuality, because there is such thing as you and there's what is not you, and just getting all of that sorted out is what's necessary to cultivate self-love. So all that to say, if your false self is in the way, you can't connect with your true self, and what your true self is a fractal of God consciousness. So hopefully that all makes sense in how I'm tying this together. By committing these gross transgressions severs that union. As a result, we lose the capacity to experience God's divine grace. Now, the grace thing, that's getting into original sin and like this inherent flawedness, which I don't resonate with. And that's where the self-loathing and stuff comes in. So that's kind of where you'll see that theme. Like a lot of this actually makes a surprising amount of sense, but then there's that little sprinkling of that sort of gaslighting. I also thought this was interesting. The origin of the word also gives us an idea of the severity of these acts. Capital comes from the Latin word caput. Caput, I don't know which is emphasized there, which means head. So that's where we get like capital punishment or capital crime involves the loss of life. So that makes a lot of sense, is like being a capital sin is one that is essentially putting yourself to death. So let's look at these one by one. The first one is pride. A feeling of being better than others, right? Your definitions are definitely important in this kind of context. So at first, I would have thought, and oftentimes Christians do talk like this. So this is where I think this is really good to get into, to kind of look at those nuances, because a lot of the times when a Christian is talking about pride, it's any sort of sense of self, right? Because you're supposed to give God all the credit. Oh, through him, all things are possible. I'm just this lowly, wretched sinner, and any good things that I do, even if I'm going out and like, being charitable or whatever, that's not really me. And that's prideful if I want to take credit for that. Like, oh, like that makes me a good person. No, that objectively makes you a good person. And there's nothing wrong with simply acknowledging that fact. But in this, again, I thought this article was pretty sensible. It's saying it's a feeling of being better than others, an attitude or reaction towards something that one owns or have a connection to because of perceived value. The habit or vice which disposes a man to make himself more than he is. So that's kind of what I was talking about, is like overcompensating, over inflating your sense of self. Both theologians and philosophers agree that pride is the worst of all capital sins. In most sources, pride is often defined as a feeling of deep pleasure or satisfaction derived from one's achievements. When you think about it in those terms, there's really nothing wrong with having pride. I was a bit surprised to see this actually, because again, many Christians will say, no, like you shouldn't have any sense of pride for anything, because all good things that you do are not you, they're God working through you, and you shouldn't take credit for those. You should just praise God instead. But so like that's a very sensible the fact that he's acknowledging, well, there's nothing wrong with being, like you built a beautiful house, or you were able to play a really difficult piece of music or something like that. Like, you should feel proud of that because you did the work. You actually did that. But when left unchecked, pride can lead to vanity and an overwhelming sense of self importance. It blinds you to God's grace and gives you the feeling of being superior to everyone. And this concept of superiority is what gives rise to acts of racism and discrimination. So, again, I actually pretty much agree with that. I do think that having that overinflated sense of self, thinking you're better, especially demographically or something, like you're a superior race or something like that, I do think that that's harmful to yourself. It's all, first of all, it's not based in truth, right? We're all equal in rights and value, just not necessarily in abilities and unique differences that we have. But that doesn't make you better than someone. The one thing I do think makes you better than another person is your actual morality, which we're going to get to later with the true 7 deadly sins. So moving on to anger. Defining as a strong feeling of displeasure and hostility brought about by frustration or annoyance. So this was one for sure. I thought, oh, well, this is going to be a good, because, anger is when aligned with truth, is a righteous and motivational emotion that will cause you to take action against that injustice. And that's a very good and necessary thing. And again, oftentimes Christianity will kind of pose this as like, oh, if you're just quick to anger, or if you're an angry person, like if you allow yourself to get angry, right, then you're cutting yourself off from God. And I say bullshit. If you're acting out of anger because someone's actually causing harm, you're acting as a force of God, as a force of truth, to restore peace and justice through that. But again, this article was surprisingly sensible. Most of the time, we become angry at people because they've offended us, either directly or indirectly, but the Bible says we should forgive each other as God has forgiven us. There's some of that mixed in there, right? Of like, for being born, we must be, asking for forgiveness and salvation and all that kind of stuff. That's bullshit. If you continue to cling to your anger instead of forgiving your enemies, it can lead you to a very dark place. Well, yeah, absolutely. That pent up anger slowly turns to wrath and then hatred. Before you know it, you're seeking revenge against your enemies. Then your enemies will seek revenge against you. It'll be an unending cycle of revenge, hatred, and violence that could go on for generations. So there's a lot of nuance to see here, really. Anger is a healthy emotion if it's properly calibrated to truth, right? If you're getting angry because somebody won't like buy your product or do what you're trying to tell them to do or whatever, like that's not reasonable. But if you're seeing a crime literally happening, or somebody's pushing you around, you should get angry. But you should do something about it, right? To correct the situation that's causing that anger, and then move on and release that. I do agree holding on to anger is extremely unhealthy and toxic, and it will eat you up from the inside out. So again, you can kind of see there's like a truthful and then a toxic way to look at this. Lust, intense or unbridled sexual desire. Intense or uncontrolled lust leads to immoral sexual acts. This is why Aquinas reasoned that it unloosens the human spirit and sets aside reason. In other words, it turns you into a slave of your own desires. You no longer care about anything except quenching your sexual needs, which makes you very dangerous. It leads you to commit acts of adultery and even rape just to get that sexual gratification you're yearning for. So, again, Christians will often say that any form of lust, any sort of sexual desire is inherently immoral. You shouldn't feel that, and if you are, then that's just you being a nasty sinner, and you should ask for forgiveness and all that. That's bullshit. That's the toxic version. I do, however, agree that sexual desire can be a very powerful force that can distract you from from a clear state of mind, from it can pull you away from healthy inhibitions, um, essentially causing you to make bad choices, right? Especially when there's something like drinking involved. That's literally what it does, is it removes your inhibitions, and then you often do things that you regret the next morning. And of course, when it's unchecked for so long and it festers and it turns into something as horrific as rape, and I do think cheating is definitely objectively wrong as well. Then that's obviously not a good thing. So again, there's your nuance there. Do I think we should be like these pious monks that just basically might as well castrate yourself because that's all ungodly? No, that's terrible and very toxic and unhealthy. But should we strive to have mastery over our own desires, including sexual desires, as well as other desires that will cause you to, as it says, set aside reason to make poor choices, and of course, especially to eventually uh, cause harm, right? Do immoral actions, then that's a problem. So, envy, a painful or resentful awareness of an advantage enjoyed by another, joined with a desire to possess the same advantage, a feeling of unhappiness over another's good fortune, together with a desire to have the same good fortune. So it's being upset that something is good that's happening to someone else or something that they have, while also wishing that you had that instead. And it's like this, like, oh, that's not fair kind of thinking. Why is it a deadly sin? From Cain killing his brother to the Pharisees plotting to kill Jesus, almost every book of the Bible has a story about envy. But being envious of other people's things or their good fortune isn't a sin in and of itself. Again, I was kind of surprised to see this. A healthy amount of jealousy will motivate you to do better and improve yourself. Exactly. It's when you let your envy fester in your heart that will eventually lead to horrible consequences. Just like with anger and lust, envy and jealousy will prevent you from seeing reason. It leads you to do things you'll most probably regret once your emotions have subsided. So really interesting here. And again, I thought this is an interesting theme that you're seeing kind of develop here, where these things aren't necessarily even bad in and of themselves. It's when they are unchecked and unresolved and they fester into more intense versions of themselves. And then that's where it starts becoming problematic. So I love that it actually said it can be useful, right? Again, as a guitarist, right? If I'm jamming with somebody and they can play something that's super impressive and melts my face off, like, there might be that little part of me that's like, you, why can you do that and I can't, right? But I choose to always appreciate their talent, the work that it took to get them there, and also to bring it back to my own power of, like, you know what, just because I can't play that now doesn't mean that I can't ever do that. And then I let that motivate me of, like, man, okay, after jamming with this person, I need to go home and practice because I need to, get my chops up to speed, right? So there's two sides to that. Moving right along here. Let's take a second to look at these comments. I've kind of been neglecting that. So sin is separation from God. Yeah. Ignorance of one's divine nature. Ego is a compensatory force. Cattle, chattel, and capital, right? Hence capitalism. Oh, he's asking about my chest tattoo. So it's the Helm of Awe, and there's the runes going around it, and then there's just sort of a decorative, I guess going full screen would help, huh? Oh. There you go. You got the runes right there. It's just something I got a few years back, and I quite like it. You're dead on. A lot of modern day Christians have never read the Bible cover to cover. They think a lot of stuff is in there that never was. Right. And I'm definitely guilty of that, even being someone that's studied a fair amount in my younger days, because yeah, there's just a lot of these kind of concepts that float around that are attached to Christianity but aren't actually rooted in scripture. And of course, fundamentalists will be the first to tell you that. Christians have adopted doormat behavior in their misunderstanding of what pride is precisely. Pride month approacheth, right? So be wary. That deadly sin's coming for you. Hopefully I'm not missing anything. If I do, I apologize, but let's keep rolling here. Let me know if you're enjoying this segment so far. This is a little bit different, right, than what I usually do. But hopefully it's valuable to you and giving you something to consider here. So number 5, greed. A selfish and excessive desire for more of something than what is necessary. And I think that last part is very important. More than what is necessary. So yeah, here's that theme again. It's like many Christians will take this idea of this sin and just expect it unanimously across the board, right? Without that nuance or that just stipulation of, well, only in excess. If you desire money at all, if you care about worldly things and materialistic things, right, that's cutting you off from God. Nonsense, right? We're here in this physical realm. Resources are very important. Fehu is the very first rune in the runes. So if you don't master that, you're not going to get very far at all. That's like the first thing, is you have to have resources to get you places. So, desiring resources is not inherently bad whatsoever. It's when it's more than what is necessary. We tend to think of greed as an excessive desire for money, but it goes way beyond material goods. A person can also be greedy for fame, power, attention, and compliments, among others. It's this kind of feeling of never enough, right? Because if you do have a wounded ego, again, wounded is the key word there, that's something that kind of comes about, is it's never enough, right? You always need more because you're seeking something outside of yourself as a proxy for internal fulfillment and wholeness, which you can never get. There's a George Carlin quote that I love. He says, trying to satisfy your happiness with money is like trying to satisfy hunger by taping sandwiches all over your body, right? It's never going to sustain you from the inside. Only you can do that for yourself. And it's done internally. It's an inside job. So the worst thing about greed is the more you have of something, the more you want of it. It's a hunger that can never be satiated. This is why many tend to view greed as a type of spiritual disease that affects all areas of a person's life. It turns them into rotten, self-centered monsters who disregard other people's welfare for their own gains. This is the satanic mindset in a nutshell, right? It's like, it's all about me. What can I get out of it? How can I benefit and profit from this? This is kind of the mindset where people give, capitalism a bad rap. Is it's not about voluntary exchange and God forbid somebody actually benefiting from the fruits of their own labor. No. It's all about, how can I exploit everyone else just to get that little edge and get a little bit ahead than the next guy. In Summa Theologica, St. Thomas Aquinas argues that greed is a direct sin against one's neighbor, since one man can possess too much of something without depriving another. It's also a sin against God because the one committing it foregoes eternal things in favor of earthly gains. See, that's another thing. It's like, how are you using your resources, right? You can't take your money with you when you die, of course not, but you can use your money to create legacy, and lasting impact that does echo beyond after you're gone here. You know, whether it's through because I think the best way to spend money is on yourself, investing in yourself through self-improvement, building skills, building knowledge, because that's all going to be, as long as you're actually using it and putting it into action, you're leveraging that into your legacy and your impact, right? The more, if I take guitar lessons, it's going to make me make better music, which then will have more of an impact. If I buy a marketing course, then I'm going to be able to get my content in front of more people. That's going to help expand their minds and give them empowering knowledge. So it's all a means to an end. It's how you're using it. You're not buying lottery tickets and going to Vegas and strippers and blow, right? If that's your idea of wealth, you're definitely missing the mark there for sure. So there was something else too. I guess I'm missing. So I read this last night, and something about like if there's a famine and you're like hoarding resources or something. Yeah, I do think that would be a bit problematic. No, protecting what you have when you know people are going to be coming to try to take what you have, that's one thing. But trying to take all of something, right? Like Bill Gates buying up all the farmland and stuff like that. That's definitely not good. All right, so moving on, we got two more. Gluttony. We're in here, the good old US of A. So definitely, I think we know a little bit about gluttony. An inordinate desire of eating and drinking, greedy or excessive indulgence. So it's not just about food and drink; it's really overindulgence in general. But typically, can be seen through diet and things. From the Latin word gula, which means to gulp down, gula, or swallow. Gluttony refers to overindulgence in food, drinks, and material things in general. Again, here's this nuance that I appreciate. This doesn't necessarily mean that eating at feasts or special occasions, like Thanksgiving or Christmas, is already gluttony, nor does it imply that people who struggle with abnormal eating habits are gluttons. There are medical conditions that cause someone to have an unhealthy obsession with food. Overindulgence only becomes a sin when it deprives other. Okay, this is where that was. The most obvious example is hoarding food in times of famine or calamities, or in this case of recent health crisis, hoarding toilet paper and hygiene items, thus raising their prices and depriving those who cannot afford them. Just like greed, gluttony eats you up from the core. It affects your life choices and the way you treat other people. Actually, I think greed and gluttony are like very similar, actually. It's just greed tends to emphasize more on money, and gluttony is kind of more mostly food, but can also be kind of material possessions. That's where the overlap is. So same idea though. It's like a little bit is glutton free. Yeah, I'm glutton intolerant. So that's a good one there. Everything is a source, so there can be no disconnection from the one source of all things. People can ignore that connection, but there can be no separation. Yeah, I mean, that's the realm of illusion, right? It appears to be and it functions as, but truly all things are one in the mind of the all. So there is no separation in factuality. However, that, I mean, there's benevolence, and then there's criminals, and there's objective good and bad, and that disconnection. I don't know. It's like it's real, but it's not real. It's kind of a paradox, as with most things here. Hence why it's so confusing. Welcome to Earth, right? Right. Separation or sin is an illusion. Exactly. All right. So last one, sloth. Disinclination to action or labor, spiritual apathy and inactivity, facetiousness of the mind, which neglects to bring good. Most of us think that sloth is the same as laziness, but sloth is more than just the reluctance to work or make an effort, which it is that as well. It's about your reluctance to leave your comfort zone. But what makes that a bad thing? Well, all of us are on borrowed time. Not everyone is given the chance or has the talents and skills that we have. Thus, we should try to make the most out of our lives and talents. If we continue to hide in our comfort zones and refuse to make an effort to make our lives better, it's a disservice to God. It's like taking everything that He has given us for granted. The moment we stop thanking Him for everything we have, we start to drift away. We begin to lose our sense of purpose and veer away from His commandments. This is what makes slothfulness such a deadly sin. So I actually agree with a lot of this. I do think that our gifts are kind of divine and that we have a certain obligation to share them, right? It's a gift, not only to ourselves, but a gift that we should then forward as a gift to the world. And that's part of our purpose, right? I think that's very much tied to our purpose, is like finding out what our gifts and talents are, and then using those to actually leave that legacy, that positive impact on the world. So I do think gratitude is good, thinking whatever you want to think, whether it's God or the universe or just feeling gratitude. That's very important. Losing our sense of purpose, yes, but veering away from His commandments, well, it depends. Are you talking about the 10 Commandments, or are you talking about the real seven deadly sins that we'll be talking about here in just a second? So to tie this all together, as a segue into the real seven deadly sins, it's like, these things are personal matters, right? They can affect other people as well, but mostly who they harm is yourself, right? Allowing yourself to be eaten up with anger, or never satisfied no matter how many good things come your way, being lazy, things like that. Like, it does affect others, but at a more cursory degree, but it really just affects yourself. So that's why I say it's more of a moral thing. It's a more of a personal thing. Much like if you want to eat crap food, that is objectively not a good choice, right? It goes against natural law, but not in an ethical sense, but in a moral sense. In other words, I don't recommend eating a crap diet, but that doesn't give me the right to come and, slap the French fries out of your hand, right? Or the cigarette out of your mouth. That's your personal choice to make for yourself. So hopefully that makes sense. We have sovereignty over ourselves, how we choose to live our lives, and our own work ethic and a desire to make better choices in that way is really contingent upon ourselves. And we can be encouraged by others. We can encourage other people to make better choices, but that's kind of where that level of influence ends. Now, when we get into the real seven deadly sins, that's where there's more grounds for actual force and intervention to stop these things from happening. But before we touch on that, what I think is interesting about this is what's called the seven heavenly virtues, which are supposedly the counterparts to these seven deadly sins. So to combat pride, you can these are out of order. Humility, right? Humility is the antidote to pride, right? Staying humble. And you can see this when people start to get famous. Some people become totally arrogant, pompous assholes, and other people, like, I don't know, Keanu Reeves comes to mind or something. I don't know how he is in real life, but there's like an overwhelming amount of stories that say he's super humble, just stayed like down to earth, like a regular guy. And I think that's very important, because if you're doing the work, right, you should always be improving and eventually gain some level of mastery over some things. But then you don't let that turn you into thinking you're better, right, and looking down on everyone and making them feel bad about themselves just because they're not where you're at, right? Greed can be combated by charity, supposedly. It's kind of the opposite manifestation of it. So, like, if you're too greedy, maybe give some money away. I don't really know. I think charity is kind of one of those really Christian-y things. I think it's very useful and good to help people sometimes, but I don't always think it's the right thing to do. In fact, oftentimes helping people, being the good Samaritan, is actually causing harm because you're enabling people. If they're making bad choices, you're kind of bailing them out, and they're not necessarily going to learn those lessons, right? And in a way, you're kind of even enabling them, right? If you give a homeless person money and they go and just buy more alcohol with it, you can say, well, I gave it to them. It's up to them what they chose to do with it. But did you actually help that person? Be honest with yourself. Did you really help them by giving them their next fix? I would say definitely not. So, just some food for thought of where that Christian mindset sometimes gets a little bit out of whack. Forgot where I was. Humility, charity, chastity would be the answer to lust, right? I would say chastity sounds like you put on a chastity belt and you're like, again, you castrate yourself. I don't think that's the answer. I think it's just, first of all, being very, very aware of yourself and exercising self-control, right? Understand your urges, acknowledge when they're happening, but then have the mental strength, inner strength to like not become a slave to those desires. Gratitude is the answer to greed, because instead of actually envy would be the counterpart. See, those get a little bit confusing, right? If you feel yourself that insecurity about someone else's abundance or skill or experience or something, that would be a great moment to answer that with like reminding yourself what you're grateful for. I actually think that's a really great practice, and something that pretty much everybody feels that little twinge of jealousy and envy sometimes. So that's a good tool that you can kind of use of, like, again, self-awareness is key. Understanding when you're feeling that way, not to let it become you, but then answer that with your own controlled conscious awareness and lean into that gratitude. Temperance is the answer to wrath, which, again, I think wrath is useful. Anger, I should say. Wrath is what they're saying it becomes if you don't check it. So, anger is useful, but use it to take action, correct the problem, and then it's also good to practice temperance and patience, right? Because sometimes you get stuck in traffic and being angry just doesn't do you any good, and it's gonna spike cortisol through your veins, and that's just not useful. So you might as well just like shift the narrative, shift the frame in your mind, and like move towards a more empowering mindset there. Diligence is the answer to sloth. So there, would be, doing your due diligence, right? Being willing to push yourself out of the comfort zone, to do what is uncomfortable to get those gains, which I think is a very kind of more pagan mindset, because while the Christians are all about like, well, let Jesus do it for you, right? Let go, let God, Jesus take the wheel. Odin said, fuck that. I'm going to hang on this tree and I'm going to suffer and I'm going to scream, taking up that knowledge and that advancement and evolution. That's where the true power comes in. So, thank you for that, Sarah. Glad you're enjoying this. So that covers the OG Christian 7 deadly sins. Now let's get into the real 7 deadly sins, which is theft, trespass, coercion, assault, rape, murder, and deception. These are actual ethical wrongdoings that objectively cause harm to other people, and things that no person under no circumstances has the right to do. And they all essentially boil down to forms of theft. So theft is one of them, but that's kind of more specifically referring to taking the product, taking the property of another person, whether it's money, you know, a car, doesn't matter what it is. It could be even like vandalism, for example, because you're claiming, right? If you go and key someone's car, you're taking an action that you would only have the right to do if you were the rightful owner. So you're making a claim of ownership on that car by taking an action that you would only have the right to do if you were the owner, but you're not the owner, so that's a wrongdoing. Well, these are all forms of theft because they're a false claim of ownership on some type of right or property of someone else. So trespass would be acting as if their land is your land. So therefore you can travel about as you please. And that is not something you would have the right to do unless that person gives you permission. Sure, come on over and have a drink. Then that's okay because that person gave you the permission of what to do with their property or what you're allowed to do. Coercion is a theft of free will choice. If you do this or if you don't do that, then I'm going to assault you in some way, right? Or steal your stuff, or I'm going to do one of these 7 deadly sins to you if you don't do what I say. So therefore, that person may choose to comply with you, but you have obfuscated and distorted their matrix of free will choice, because that's not a choice that they would have made if you had not coerced them, right? So you're stealing their free will ability to act in accordance with what's best for them. Them giving you your wallet because you're holding a gun to their head, that's not in their best interest. Assault is a false claim of ownership upon the body of another person. You could even say it's a form of vandalism, right? Instead of keying their car, you punch them in the face and break their nose, or scratch them, or, shoot them in the leg or the head even. That's going to escalate from assault to murder, because if you assault them to the point of death, now you've got 2 crimes on the rap there. But essentially, again, assault is I own your body. I can do with it whatever I want, including causing harm. Rape is the theft of voluntary sexual interaction, giving, it's kind of like coercion, right? It's taking away their free will choice to say no to that. Murder, obviously, is taking a life. They even call it, taking someone's life. You're taking that which is not yours. And deception, this is one that often gets forgotten because it's like, well, it's not physically harming anyone, but much like coercion, deception distorts the matrix of free will choice. In other words, if I tell you, hey, would you like to buy this vacuum cleaner? It works fine. And then you buy it and you get it home and it's broken, right? You made a choice that you would not have made if I had been forthcoming with that information that it's broken, right? So that distorted your free will choice through deception, through withholding or bending truth information. So, and that can absolutely lead to very harmful effects, right? I mean, there's many examples of that, but it can objectively cause harm, not directly, but sort of indirectly. So that definitely goes on the list. And again, you're taking a person's ability to exercise informed consent. There's a reason that that's a concept, informed consent, because you have to have all the information that you require to make an informed decision. And if you don't, your decision might be faulty, and again, at that person's expense. So that's a quick run through of the 7 deadly sins. Obviously, that went a lot quicker than the than the other stuff, but it is pretty straightforward, right? And there's a lot of nuance to it. These are kind of broad strokes, but I think the point here is really, if we could just understand these at a basic level, then think about how much the world would improve, right? You can argue about, oh, that person was intoxicated, so they consented, but their consent was sort of blurry, right? There's gray areas. There are. And I think that a lot of these anarchist and natural law students are doing a disservice to truth and natural law by not simply acknowledging that there are gray areas. They're very one track minded, intent on, no, it's just black and white, it's objective, it's not up to people's interpretation. And it's like, well, for certain things, right? If I come up to a total stranger and just blast them in the face with a shotgun, yeah, that's pretty fucking objectively just black and white. It is what it is, right? But if yeah, like I said, if consent was a little bit blurry, what about the age of consent, right? There's another, getting into the um informed consent, right? If you have to be of sound mind, you have to be of a certain mental maturity to make informed decisions as well. And, uh, of course, like sexual intercourse with an 8-year-old, that's black and white fucking wrong. But there is no one magical day where somebody wakes up and, oh, today's the day. I'm not a child anymore. Now I can totally make all informed decisions, right? It's kind of a spectrum, and there's going to be like a gray area of that transition between. And if you want to play it safe, I would say stay away from that gray area, right? Because then you're kind of on the line. It's better to be operating in the black and white areas and try to stay away from the gray areas, instead of sort of uh, picking at and poking holes in that kind of, because this is what people do that are very anti-objective morality. They're like, well, we acknowledge that there's subjective aspects to morality, therefore morality is subjective. And there's this big dialectic that I think needs to get more attention, where there's just these two camps where people are saying, well, there's these gray areas, so therefore morality is subjective. And then there's people like, no, there's these very black and white areas, therefore it's objective. Well, they're both correct. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that these things exist. There are black and white and gray areas. And I think that what it comes down to is that people are afraid of taking that responsibility, of using discernment, of actually exercising their own conscience. They want to look to an external authority, like, what does the law say? What is, let's have some kind of council, village council, maybe that sometimes is useful if you're getting the opinions of other people. But at the end of the day, if it's a subjective matter, then no amount of consensus or not consensus is going to change what is actually objectively true about it, right? If everybody in a village decided, oh, murder's probably okay, or this was like, an excusable instance or something like that, that doesn't change what actually is objectively right and wrong. So there's no escaping, is my point, that responsibility for every individual to exercise their own conscience, to study morality, to really think about these different situations and gray areas, and figure out where to draw those lines. And again, if it's in a murky area where you can't draw a line, it's best to stay away from that, right? Just stay in the green zone, and things would be a lot simpler, right? But at the very least, if we could just get the objective black and white parts right, the world would be so drastically different, because the government would not exist, for one thing. If people would not be doing like blatant crimes, there, theft, murder, the 7 deadly sins, right? So I think that's the key thing to take away with this, is acknowledging that these areas exist. There's black and white, there's gray, And it's up to us to actually have a high level of awareness and conscious discernment to be able to hear or look at a situation, or especially be involved in or participating in a situation, and be able to decide, here's my options, here's my choices. What am I comfortable with? What seems most moral or holistically good, right? Not just what's good for me, because that's the egocentric satanic mindset of, oh, nobody else matters. If it's good for me, then that's good, and I'm going to go with that, right? That's the mindset of many people, if not a majority of people in some capacity, especially in places like the corporate world or the court of law. It's all about winning, not about truth, not about goodness. It's just win, dog eat dog. So yeah, and without a high level of self-care, self-love, taking it back to that post that I mentioned earlier, how are you going to know? Because ultimately, if we're all locked in our trauma-based mind control, then many, if not most of the choices that we're going to make are unconscious or subconscious, running on programs, not really aware, not really empowered and sovereign and in the interest of goodness, but lost my train of thought. You're going to be projecting that self-loathing, right? It's like, again, someone who's racist, right? They think they're right. They think they're the good guy. They're acting out of that self-loathing and that self-hatred. So they're grasping at some identity construct to say, oh, well, I'm part of this superior race, therefore I'm better, so I'm okay. I don't have to hate myself. It keeps me safe up here on my pedestal. But they're just projecting that actual self-loathing, and they're not aware of it. And that is going to actually cause harm. So if you're not doing that internal work, that's what's going to happen. So only when you truly come to that place of balance, self-love and acceptance and respect for other people's rights, not violating the 7 deadly sins, you're going to stop pushing out and acting out in these sort of loathsome and toxic and harmful beliefs, mindsets, whatever it may be. If maybe you're pro-war or something, right? It's not about the cause. You're going to jump on board because the news is going to tell you something, and well, they're a bunch of godless savages, so it's okay that we go and bomb them. And you're like, fuck yeah, because I just want to see the world burn and I want to see people die because I'm projecting that hatred, that vitriol that I feel inside out into the world, but then I'm disguising it as some sort of virtue. It's very important. So, that's what it comes down to. We have to bring it back to ourselves, the individual, do the work, heal. Otherwise, we're not going to stop projecting those vitriolic worldviews and by extension, harmful actions that we think are justified, but are actually just us kind of directing that hatred into something else. So hopefully that all makes sense. That pretty much covers everything as far as this topical discussion. Is everybody alive still out there? I see we've still got 30 viewers, but the chat's gone a little bit quiet. Give me some feedback here. Let me know, guys. What do you think about this? Do you agree? Is there something that I missed? And I guess real quick, I can drop the share link into the chat for anyone who wants to jump in and ask me a question. That is now in the chat. Don't be shy. You can come on video. You can be on audio if you like. You can ask a question or just, say something, whatever you like. Still here. Thank you, Sarah. Glad to know. Before you pray, take action. Yeah, exactly. It's all about property rights. Yep, derived from self-ownership. So all wrongdoings are derived from property rights. What is your rightful property? What do you own? Your body, your choices, and your right to operate freely in the world, unhinged, uninhibited by people. I can't talk right now. The foundation of the great work. Absolutely. So we'll see if we have any questions. You can drop a question in the chat if you like. But if we don't get any, then I will probably wrap this up here pretty soon. Thanks everyone for tuning in, of course, and for your engagement. Really appreciate that. All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap us up for today. I appreciate everyone being here. Hopefully this was a good and useful topic to cover. I thought it was pretty decent. I enjoyed going through this, handling this on my own. It's good practice for me. It's definitely outside of my comfort zone, speaking of. Rana says, thanks. This makes perfect sense and something I've worked on learning over the past 3 years. Yeah, it's definitely good stuff to consider. I mean, it's very foundational knowledge, and that's what I want this channel to be all about. You know, I do like kind of touching on some fringe concepts and topics and stuff, but I always want to be bringing it back to first principles, right? And teaching especially morality and natural law. I mean, if we can't get that right, we're fucked, right? So that's really my main focus. And then I just throw in some other stuff for spice and to kind of round it out, because I don't want to be too just one track minded nailing on something here. But in your opinion, why are people waking up at this time in history? Well, great question. Thanks, Dick. A bit of different ways I could answer that. I do think it's part of a larger cycle, to start with the kind of the macro perspective. If you ever heard of something called the precession of the equinoxes, I don't know how much stock you put in this. It's something that I've heard, and it definitely seems to make sense that the Earth is moving on its axis in a sort of a circular wobble, and we go through these phases of dark ignorance and then enlightenment and awakening and evolution. And it makes sense, right? It's all kind of a spiral, right? Wisdom moves in spirals. Nature moves in circles, right? It makes total sense from a natural law perspective. And I do think that we are, moving into the age of Aquarius. This is a cyclical time for awakening, and the apocalypse, which means all shall be revealed. But even on a more practical, ground level viewpoint, I think that we've been through enough at this time. Things are ramping up to the point that the mirror is becoming unavoidable to be reflected back at what we're creating here. The chaos and harm and the suffering that's unnecessary is being perpetrated by ourselves, by us and our actions. And I always think about in the Matrix, if you ever notice, the more powerful Agent Smith becomes, the more powerful Neo becomes. Or is it the other way around? Is it the more powerful Neo becomes, the more powerful Smith becomes? Because they're two sides of the equation, right? They're on the two sides of the equal sign, right? So they're balancing. And the governments, the world, the world institutions, the global networks, and the powers that should not be are ramping things up. And I think that's sort of acting as a sort of a catalyst to propel us forward into a higher level of awareness as well. So hopefully that's making sense. It's like we've had enough. The worse things are getting, the more we're being abused, the more people are kind of it's putting some people into a deeper trance because it is trauma-based mind control. But for some, it's having the opposite effect of it's actually kind of shaking them out of their slumber and being like, okay, what the fuck's going on here? Like, I want to understand what's happening, why it's happening, and then how can we stop it? Because it's becoming more and more obvious that we're on a very clear trajectory towards destruction or at the very least total enslavement. So that's my take. Hopefully that answers your question. Thank you for that. Daryl says, could you elaborate a little more how government commits all those acts of theft for the viewers? Absolutely. Great question. So start with theft. First and foremost, obviously, there's taxes. That's a big one. It's blatantly obvious. Taxation is theft. It's by force, by coercion. We are claiming ownership, right? We have the rights to a portion of your labor, right? That is the definition of slavery. Like, you work and we will take our cut, whether it's 100% or 10%, it's all slavery. It's just different degrees. So that's the big obvious one. Trespass. Well, they can come to your house. They can kick in your door if they're doing something they decided they don't like, or is some kind of threat to national security or whatever they decide is a reasonable justification, then they can, yeah, absolutely let themselves into your property. Coercion. Well, everything they do is coercion. Everything they do through law, legislation, and enforcement is all backed by violence. They're not suggestions. They're not, would you please do this? It's no, do this, comply or die, literally. Because if you don't believe or don't agree with a certain thing and decide you want to resist, they have the right to kill you, and they will do that. So there's murder as well. There, go ahead and knock that one out as well. If I say, hey, you're gonna come do laundry for me once a month, and you're like, no, like, that's stupid. You don't have the right to say that. And then I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna come pick you up once a week to bring you to my house to do laundry. And if you try to resist me doing that, then I'm going to escalate force up until killing you. Well, that's literally what the government does. That's how all laws operate is, here's the law. And if you decide you don't want to comply, or you think you have some better idea of morality, well, it's not up to you. We'll decide for you with force. Rape, now that one, it's a little ambiguous. There are plenty of cases where police have molested people, raped people. You got the TSA illegally feeling you up. They're not even part of the government, I think. Pretty sure. I think they're a private corporation. I could be wrong about that, but regardless, that's dabbling in that territory, though. That's one that's not the most obvious of everything. And of course, deception, well, that's one of the biggest ones of all. It's all deception, right? Even to legitimize their own existence is a deception. To trick you into thinking that slavery is not only moral and acceptable, but necessary. That's the ultimate deception. And then everything they do through their propaganda, they own the media companies. They're deceiving people not only, again, to justify and validate their own existence, but then to further polarize people into left and right political parties and otherwise, to create even more dissent and chaos. Because guess what? Well, that's why we're here, right? The worse the world gets, the more crime there is, the more you need government, because it's just not safe, right? We can't be having freedom. You need more government to combat that, even though the more government is creating more chaos, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it's a cycle that never ends. So that covers all those. Thanks for that question, Daryl. If I asked, my answer would sound like an echo with as many others at this time. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. It's a shame most Christians don't know what true sin is. Right, right. And I mean, those who know me know I'm not a big fan of Christianity. Now, I think it's important to differentiate people from their beliefs. I'm not anti-Christian, as in I'm not anti-Christians. I'm anti-Christianity. And that's as much out of love for the people that are believing it, right? I don't want you to believe in disempowering bullshit. It's bad for you. I want you to let go of that programming and actually rise into your true potential, which you're not going to do believing in stuff like Christianity. So, yes, very true as well. Interpretation, because it's all, well, if the laws themselves are subjective, they're just right. We got together and decided, hey, this was a good idea, we're going to enforce this. It's all subjective there. So of course, even within there, we can bend the wording and create these little loopholes so that it really works out in our favor and however is most advantageous to us at the time. Nothing we own, well, in my opinion, nothing said we own you more than U.S. military draft. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, against your will, you're going to sacrifice your very body and life if necessary to, go and inflict violence on other people, all to serve our agendas. Nothing to do with freedom, nothing to protect actual rights, which is the nonsense that they peddle as, oh, fight and serve your country and you're fighting for freedom. Bullshit, dude. Nothing of the sort. Seems at the end of cycles they pervert society on overdrive. Yeah, those are the telltale signs of the end stages of a collapsing empire, and we've seen this in history, in our own history, like that we actually have access to, because obviously, we don't have the complete story by any means, but even what we have access to through, Rome, Egypt, the British Empire, they've all ended the same way, and all of those signs are there. It happens very similarly, and we're absolutely in the same repeating pattern at the moment. Interesting. Painting the lamb's blood on the door while they hide. Yep. Yes, because the state is an extension of religious belief. The state is a religious belief, but I think monotheism installs the operating system for statism as a program to run on top of. They work together really, really well. It's like you have Windows and then you have like Microsoft Word on top of that or something like that. Because they're both forms of external authority that get you to abdicate your power and your authority to something else, whether it's God, the church, government, politician, whatever it may be. I have not heard of Truth Seeker. Is that a YouTube channel? Christian mystic rapper. He goes in deep with it. Yeah, that'd be cool. Feel free to share. Maybe if you want to message me on Facebook or something, send me some links. I'll see if I can reach out to them. Morality, where does that come from? The inside out, or is that determined from the outside? That's a good question. As above, so below, right? So always taking it back to first principles. Natural law is something that exists outside of ourselves, though we are a part of it. So even that is kind of an illusion, right? We're not separate from nature. We are nature. But the laws themselves are independent from subjectivity, right? They're objective, they're immutable, they're built into the universe, and natural law would be a thing even if every last human disappeared and died off. However, the knowledge of morality via conscience is internal. It's from our own conscious awareness of it, right? It's like you can see a sunset. That's something that's happening objectively. Now, we could call it a sunset. We could come up with a totally different name for it. What we call it is irrelevant so long as we actually know what it is and we're being honest with what we're observing as a cosmic force. That's how I see natural law. It doesn't matter what we call it as long as we actually understand it in a useful and practical way. And that comes from within. Conscience, your conscience, your knowledge of right and wrong means con is together and science means knowing. This alone points to the fact that morality is knowable. Great question. Thank you. I've heard of Bill Donahue. To hear the Bible translated in consciousness. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of wisdom and truth in the Bible, but personally, it's just not. I don't resonate with that path. I just, there's so many traps and snares and programs built into it. I prefer to run a path that's much more direct and less booby trapped, basically. And to each their own. That's my whole thing as a pagan. What you practice, how you find God, how you find truth yourself, whatever, that's completely up to you. I really don't care. As long as it's actually useful. That's why I speak against Christianity, because I'm pointing out the ways that I think it's harmful. That doesn't mean I'm going to try to force anyone to not be Christian, but I'm allowed to say what I think about it. And that's just, that's where my influence ends, right? I'm allowed to speak my mind, and that's what I'm going to do because, again, it's actually coming from a place of care. So, I call it the poison cup. It's like, yes, you can drink from it and you can build up your fortitude for poison and processing that or run it through a filtration system. But hey, man, there's a clean water source over here. Why don't you just dump that shit out and come just drink clean water? It's much easier. That's my take. The in and out are reflections, absolutely. Drives an individual to do the right thing when no one's looking or never know about your contribution. Yeah, that's what I think integrity actually is you do the right thing and you don't do the wrong thing for no other reason than just being a good person of integrity. That's so important, because if you're doing it for accolades or to, be seen as a good person, well, your motivations aren't pure. It's completely missing the point, right? You don't do a good actions because it gets you favor from people or makes people think of you as a good person. No, and that's where the true self-love comes in. If you truly love yourself, it doesn't matter who sees it or doesn't see it. You're not going to betray yourself by doing something shady. It's just as simple as that. Rika, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you. I know you got to go, but thanks for, taking time out of your day. I really appreciate that. The Bible isn't for everyone. Yeah, many paths, right? And I don't think it's the most direct path either. It's like, what can I say? I like efficiency. Call me crazy, but I'd rather just not have to do all this work of discerning what's a program, a virus, and what's actually useful. Not if I don't have to, anyways. Where's the line between reflection of as within, so without, or as above, so below? If you witness something bad outside yourself, how could anyone say you're connected to that? Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what I was talking about earlier, where I said it's like a dual, it's almost like a paradox. It's both true and untrue, right? We're all in the mind of the all. We're all part of the same energy source. We're all connected to each other and to the creator, the higher intelligence, whatever you want to call it. But in this world, there are boundaries. There are separations, right? Here's a cup, here's my phone. These are two separate things, right? They're made out of the same building blocks. They're being projected from the same source. But if I can't call my mom with this cup, right? They have different forms, they have different functions, and consciousness itself, being a human being, for example, is one of the most high level units of function because we are little g gods. We are creators in our own respect. And it's extremely important what we are creating. And morality has everything to do with what we're creating and having those foundations in place to assume we have all this room for freedom and creativity so long as we don't violate these 7 laws. It's very simple, but yet, that's where the line is, because you have all this room for freedom. You just have these 7 things that you don't do, and only it's not like, oh well, I guess if that's all, that's easy enough to comply with. It's not just a matter of convenience or practicality. It's also being holistically, like if you do one of those things, you're betraying yourself by also being a hypocrite, right? You can't possibly want your consent violated because that's how it's defined, as something that you don't consent to. So how can you do something to someone else that you would not possibly want done to you? That's the true meaning of the golden rule. So check out that video actually on my channel, the true meaning of the golden rule. Just go back like a few months and you'll find it. The majority of people do not understand the esoteric significance of so-called religious doctrines. It's always rooted in occultism, nature, and truth. Yeah, exactly. But has been hijacked for control purposes, and it comes from that stuff anyway. So why go through the parasitic middleman when you can go right to the source? Just look directly to nature and directly to pure occultism instead of sifting through all that bullshit. That's a great point, Will. Thank you. Infinity made manifest. Awesome comments, everybody. I'm actually surprised and grateful that the chat started popping again, and I got some great questions here. I really enjoy interacting with you guys. I love creating kind of off the cuff answers. I think that's where some of my best stuff comes through, is where I'm kind of giving like a intuitive bouncing off of something that wasn't planned. So I really enjoy these kind of Q&A sessions. So, but I think this is a good place to end off for the day. I got to go take care of some stuff anyways, go move some shit, help my dad out. So thank you everyone for being here. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, of course, please, first of all, click the like button. It takes a split second to do, and that's the easiest and best way to help the channel out. But if you want to go a step further, of course, definitely subscribe. Make sure you click the bell, but also share with a friend. I don't want this to be an echo chamber. I want to be constantly trying to reach new people. So share this with somebody, a friend, a family member, even a coworker, somebody that you think can benefit from learning more about morality and spirituality, and hopefully they'll stick around and become regular viewers of the show and of the podcast and everything, because ultimately I want to help as many people as I can. So you can help me do that as well, because that's what Tribe's all about, right? So much love to you all. I hope you have a great week. Keep kicking ass. Keep powering through the flames. Big changes are coming, as Rodney was talking about earlier. We're almost there. So these next 2 weeks are going to be absolutely critical, that you're doing the work, that you're sticking in the fight, not giving up, keeping a positive mindset, a powered mindset, and keeping your eye on the fucking prize, right? What are you here to do? What are you working for? What kind of life do you want to live? Ask yourself these questions first and foremost. And then what are you doing about it? How, are you actually taking action? Are you moving towards that goal? And, what are the milestones? Because maybe your goal seems really far away, but what are the little things that you can do on a daily basis that'll move that needle and get you there a little bit closer? Focus on that. Believe in yourself. Love your damn self. And we're in this together. So I love you all. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you next week for another episode of the Wizard Factory Live show. But until then, be empowered, inspired, and encouraged. Peace.